Hey guys, sorry for the abrupt transition. I got StreamYard is terrible. StreamYard is really bad. I'm sure there's a better way to do this. I have like Stream Labs OBS. I should probably be doing that, but
it's okay, Lofty. You're a rookie at this. I mean, you'll learn.
That's true. At hosting, I'm a rookie. I've hosted one time. It was awkward. Oh, look, it's Camelot in the chat. Hey, Camelot.
What up, Cam?
Hey.
So
you should get Camelot in here. Just take his shirt off, and then you'll get a bunch of girls to watch you.
That's true. Yeah, just bring him in for like 30 minutes and then just kick him out. Until
He's like, hey, y'all, I wrote a story too about this crazy chick I was banging one night. Like, come on now, Cam. We know.
I just want to talk to him about NASCAR.
Yeah, he's got a lot of NASCAR pull in his circle. I don't know who he's, other than him, who is like a NASCAR YouTuber. I don't know if there's other people that do that stuff. But,
well, he told me he hangs out with Dale Earnhardt like every weekend, so you know it's legit.
Junior or senior? What are we talking about here?
A senior, of course, the one everyone loves.
Oh yeah. I don't want any necrophilia in this chat. This is a bad way to start a stream. Yeah. So thank you for joining, everybody. I don't know where. Hey, Umbrella Guy's here.
What up, Todd?
Hey, what's up? Yeah, so this is like the first kind of stream that I plan on doing, like more of these, probably weekly. Just having random guests on my channel and trying to grow, other than like my meme channel or my memes on this channel, which I post occasionally. And this is like an interesting one for me because I'm kind of at the moment writing an outline for a comic book. And I know that a lot of people are in my position where it's like, I have an idea for a comic book. I never thought it was, I didn't put too much thought into it before because it's like, okay, well, you need to work for a company or whatever. And, but now with all of this fundraising and campaigning and stuff, that's kind of booming. It's way more like, what's the word I'm looking for?
We're in a like weird print golden age right now that we're gonna appreciate a lot more when it's gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's way more accessible to new people. And so that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. Trying to think if there's any other housekeeping that I need to take care of. I'm just going to introduce myself to anybody who might be coming from other people's channels quick, and then you guys can do a little intro. So I'm Lofty Pixels. I have this YouTube channel. I put a bunch of memes and stuff and funny content on it. And then I'm on Twitter. I'm way more active on Twitter, at Lofty Pixels. And I also work for The Quartering. So if you've seen any of his videos, I do all his like memes in the beginning and then his sponsor ads and stuff like that. And yeah, I also stream on Flashcast on the weekends. So I kind of get around a little bit. And I met all these guys just through networking on Twitter. And yeah, so let's start with whoever wants to just introduce yourself quick and go for it.
Well, I guess I'll go next since I'm right after Loft up there. My name is Joe Ball. I do a comic book called Death, Death, Death. It is currently live on Indiegogo, and it's due out in December. It's a 300-page sci-fi fantasy. It's kind of like Berserk meets Transformers meets the Bible. So imagine all of that kind of lumped together. That's what I'm working on, and I write and color and draw, and I do everything on that.
Awesome. Yeah. And you do stuff for other people, I guess. I don't know if Yellow Flash is in this chat, but
yeah, I'm doing a project with Flash eventually here. We've been working on it here and there over the months. Yeah, I've done work for Phil. I've done work for Malin, for I don't know. It's hard for me to think because it's been so many. But basically, like almost everyone in CG at this point, I've done something for.
Okay, Scott, go ahead, I guess.
Yeah. So I'm Scott McCullough. I'm the writer and producer, I guess, of Door Kickers. I was also the writer on Peregrine, Wings of the Falcon. And I was drawn into CG because I've been a long time comics fan, and I also wrote on and off over the years. And CG was really or Comicsgate is really where I kind of got into actually making my own comics. And like you said, the barrier to entry for somebody who wants to produce a comic book is amazingly low at this point. It probably was always amazingly low. We just never realized it, and the internet and crowdfunding is making it even lower. So that's my background in the comics bit, and then my platform here on YouTube is a little different. My career choice in life is very different than comics. It's the military. And so my YouTube channel is the Future Conflict YouTube channel. So if you see in the chat, Future Conflict, that's me. And we cover, we have a show called the Council on Future Conflict, which is where I have a group of former military and intelligence community veterans who all kind of come together, and we kind of crowdsource analysis on current and future conflicts. And so we've been focused heavily on the Ukraine-Russia war, and which is kind of the opposite of what the comic book stuff is. But we have a lot of I've been on with Legal Mindset several times. He's a good dude, and so a lot of his audience has kind of come over to join me on YouTube. So that's who I am.
Awesome. That's great. And Phil? What's up, Phil?
Yeah. I'm here. I'm Phil Diaz. I run a publishing company now with my brothers, 8 Comics. We've been crowdfunding books for almost 3 or 4 years now. And I'm the writer. And so I wrote, our first book was Magic Cop. We've come out with 2 of those so far. So Magic Cop 1 and 2. The Lost Pages 1 and 2, which is kind of our superhero universe. Joe actually did some work for us in the first one, which was awesome. And we have that out. It's shipping out right now. I wrote for other people. I wrote for John Malin. I did a Graveyard Shift story that is going to be shipping out in the next couple months. And working on another short story for my buddy Passion for Drawing in Tales of Nova Terra, which is a fantasy magazine that he crowdfunded. And then I'll also be writing the new Pit series with Dale Keown very soon. So same thing with like Scott and Joe kind of coming up with CG. And you touched on it before where, very much so before I got into CG, only really think that the way to get into comics is through the big 2, but now it's so accessible. I wouldn't know any of these guys or any of the artists that I'm working with if it wasn't for crowdfunding Comics Day.
Nice. Yeah, that's an interesting perspective too to take on this whole thing, which is just networking with your peers. Seems to be like, as far as I'm aware, and I you guys can let me know if I'm off in terms of like priorities for your expertise, but I've found that networking and like just being yourself and being open, talking to people, talking to your followers, like being actively responsive to different kinds of people, like it's a really good way to build friendships and opportunities kind of like fall in your lap almost.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah. And I'm talking just from appearing on like these podcasts and like talking to these people. I haven't tried doing any creative stuff outside of YouTube, but I'm sure it's like very similar.
Well, if I could jump in here,
Yeah.
One of the things that so I think it's ironic that both Phil and I are in here. Joe less so, but Joe, this applies to Joe too. Me and Phil started crowdfunding our first comic essentially at the same time, and because of that, we were essentially on a lot of shows either close to each other or at the same time. I think Phil, we were on Mandy's show together. That was the first show we did together. I can't remember for sure, but the cool thing is that there are a lot of opportunities just going on these different YouTube platforms and whatnot to meet people. You feel like you get to know people just from watching, but because especially at you've got the guys who are just swamped, like the big names, because they're popular, right? And so they only have so much bandwidth. And then you've got more, first time creators or whatnot, which have the ability to do the, to kind of go on smaller shows and things like that. And and by doing that, that's how you meet people, right? And so that's how I met Phil, and that's how we ended up doing like a mashup poster for our first books. That was very cool. So it's kind of, I see a very full circle type thing, and we're not even around all the way halfway around the circle yet. Down the line, there's going to be a lot of people who met through CG and met through some of these smaller channels and the smaller, when only 5-6 people are watching the channel, there's more people on the channel than there are in the audience. Those are the old days. And in some ways the best days, because you're able to do that. Now a lot of channels get a lot of audience, so it's a little different.
Yeah. That's a really interesting perspective. And actually I had this outline that prepared that I was going to kind of go through a bunch of different topics that we're going to talk about. Networking was like one of the last ones, but it's kind of better we started off with it, because I think it gives people kind of a realist perspective on like, oh yeah, this is actually something that you can do if like you're passionate about it. If you have an idea, if you're a people person, like if you're good with talking to different people, and it's definitely possible to navigate this creative space.
It's a very accessible form of entertainment.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, you talk like Joe, you could probably get into this before all this networking through CG and online and YouTube and stuff. I mean, you have been working and making comics forever and trying to break in, going to conventions, and that's how you used to network before all of this. You go to Comic-Con and whatever state you're in, and you'd bring your portfolio, or you'd try to get in front of an editor and let them see and critique your stuff. And just now, all of that is done here,
It's all of that's like now obsolete, and it was always obsolete, but the problem was there were no other like better ideas yet. Like even when you try to search them out or find new creative things, it was always just like a spin on still doing that. And it's like, but it costs so much money to go to conventions on a regular basis. Like you're gonna always just be in the hole, basically. Mm-hmm. And if you want to make money and you're good enough to pick up work, and in the world of indie comics, it's anything goes. You can have any kind of style or a talent level and still work your way in if somebody likes your stuff and get paid work. So it's just the opportunities are way better. The networking's better. You reach so many more people so fast. We've just never had something like this since since comic books were nostalgically popular.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so I feel like that's I guess that's a pretty good introduction to the topic for tonight. I wanted to start by saying, personally, I'm gonna be like asking you guys a bunch of questions as like kind of a person that is like uninformed, kind of. Like I feel like I have some ideas because I've talked to some of you guys, but uninformed about the process, but might have a good idea or might have like some creativity. And I feel like it's going to be able to kind of like, I'll be able to kind of talk from a perspective of like, I'm sure people are watching here that I already know from the comments, people said that they have some cool ideas that they were thinking about working on. And that's kind of like where I'm coming from too. So, yeah, I have all these different topics that I want to cover. I will say that. So, I have a comic idea in mind, and I know that if I sat down right now and wrote, let's say, a chapter of a book, I know that I could just write exactly what I want and make it basically write the story that I want with the characters that I want in that format.
Yeah.
Because I'm familiar. I went to school. I went to university. I took creative writing. I double majored in journalism and film studies, which is a lot of like essay writing and things like that. But it's kind of a little bit confusing to me to like imagine trying to write a story that would, look good on paper and like would make sense, and then translating that to a comic book. Because it's just a completely different medium. So I guess if any of you guys want to talk about how many of you guys are like writers and created your own comics? I guess all of you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you're coming up with an idea, do you consider how do you think about like narrative flow? For example, when you're writing a comic book, we all know, and manga included, that there's the kind of the traditional way of writing is like by volumes or chapters or issues, and there's kind of like story beats that kind of hit beginning, middle, and end in each issue, and then there's like also overall umbrella story beat that goes through the entire story of the comic. Let's say you're starting a comic from the very beginning, like you're outlining your ideas, you're researching your genre, you're thinking about your characters. What is let's say, like, what's the first thing that you guys would be focusing on or prioritizing? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, no. So I this is actually one of the things that I became kind of, I started my comic way before I joined CG, but I had to very quickly change my project once I did the necessary research in CG in order to be successful. Mm-hmm. And I want to hear Phil's take on this too, because ultimately, if you're just gaming the system, you're gonna look at your audience or the potential audience, and you just go, what's the most marketable idea that I can come up with for that audience, right? And so that's a cynical way to kind of approach it, but it's also from a pure business standpoint, that's the way you do it. But if you look at, say, my project, which is Door Kickers, which is a niche, it's military horror, right? So that's niche, right? There's plenty of superhero fans out there that aren't going to be interested in that. Phil's first project, Magic Cop, same thing. It's totally niche, right? But it's the key, I think, that both of us focused on those early books was quality, and good quality team members, good a respecting the craft, and making sure that, that when we did kind of jump into it, that, that we did it with, from the standpoint of doing right by the audience. I'd like to get Phil's thoughts on this because, so your book, I mean, on first blush, your book is not like is not it's highly marketable, but on the other hand, it is highly marketable because you knew your audience, right?
I mean, I guess specifically for Magic Opera, it's a super hard sell in probably every aspect. I think the networking and streaming really comes into play there of the marketing, like kind of guerrilla tactic marketing with CG and stuff. But as for, getting started with a story, I mean, it's just like any other story would be, you're brainstorming and stuff like that. But I think what you were getting at in the start of your question, Lofty, was kind of because you were talking about how you could write your story
right,
like the way you learned in university how to write stuff, right? But what is the transition there from taking that into a comic?
Yeah. So if I could just add like one bit to clarify to that.
Yeah.
So when you're writing a story, in like a novel or short story format, you're writing dialogue. You are also writing internal monologues. You're writing, descriptions of, scenery, and you're doing everything yourself. So when you're writing a comic book, if you're not an artist, you're not going to necessarily be focused on the artwork, right? That's what I'm assuming.
Well,
so
however,
go ahead.
However involved you want to be in with scripts. There's some people that write full script and they're laying, like as a writer, laying out the panels to direct the artist and what they want them to look like and what they want them to draw. Some people are more loose with that. And famous artists like Alan Moore are notorious for doing very, very overly detailed full scripts, but also leaving, like he doesn't care if like Dave Gibbons would change something on him. In fact, Alan Moore would draw out panel layouts for himself and never show artists.
Wow.
So like it depends on how involved you want to be, but there's a big difference in writing just a short story for like a magazine or something, and then doing it in for comics. I think a lot of that you learn the pacing of comics and writing comic strips or comic pages is very important, and that's something you can only learn by doing it. I think, reading a lot of comics, being familiar with that, and then doing that, because even since I've started writing stuff, I've just learned more about page pacing and story beats, page turns. So and my advice I always say to like writers that are coming into this, write short comics, like write a 6-page or even a 4-page story, because if you can get characterization down in a short amount of time, if you can get the pacing down, the action and dialogue, then you could extrapolate that into just putting another 4 pages on that and then another until you're full issue.
This sounds like what I did a lot of in school, which is script writing for like film or theater, and we would do that would be an exercise. You write a scene, or like write a 10-minute short film, and then find a beginning, middle, and end for like a sequence, or like a or whatever, you know what I mean? Just kind of experiment. I've written short plays before. Yeah, it's just a really helpful thing to do to get your like, you don't have to necessarily jump into the best idea that you have that you just want to, like, you know, you
Yeah,
like
I'd say don't do
desperately.
that.
Yeah.
Do the opposite. Of that.
Don't.
Don't do that. Save that stuff. You know, get your practice scripts down. And
Right.
before I even got into CG, I was trying to, you know, start writing comics and stuff. I heard from like people around. I'm from Chicago, so like the kind of like the indie comic scene over here. When they didn't exile me for that,
Wait,
they would
is that
say
somebody typing? I'm sorry. I wasn't sure if it was typing or if it was like scratch effect for like a microphone. Oh, sorry, Scott. Sorry, Scott. I just wanted to clarify. Anyway, go ahead.
yeah. So I would hear everyone would say, "Yeah, your first comic you ever make is the shitty. It's your worst comic. You have to get that out of the way, you know, to go on and make your good stuff." And yeah, so definitely don't go full head and try to make this epic. You know, and how I kind of started in writing in general was short stories and poetry, and you know, kind of that small structures that lead you to build these big towers and stuff. You know.
Absolutely. And like, yeah, maybe not necessarily don't even think about the comic book media. Maybe just write a short story or write a poem. You know, to be honest, I've written poetry at university, and I've gotten some published like in nationwide like contests and things like that. And it was like I was like super passionate about it. And then kind of later on in life, I was like, okay, it might have been like an echo chamber thing where it's like you're at university and like that's what people do. But then I'm like thinking, I have a lot of these interesting ideas that I've written in like poem forms that I've turned into short stories or like you know, a scene for like a movie or something. And like you can kind of you can start anywhere and like develop an idea and then use it to, you know, further some idea that you have or connect it to a completely separate idea that you have, you know.
Did that if in my first Lost Pages book, the story that Joe actually illustrated for me is based on a poem that I wrote, and the narration to it is a poem, and that was like a big experimental thing because I'm like, you know, I dig this. Let's see if other people do. And I've had people like, yeah, I love that. It's so cool. It's like a sea shanty thing. I mean, Joe's art is amazing, so everybody loved that. I've had other people be like, I don't know what the hell Phil was trying to say with that thing. Like, what was that wild card story about? So I've heard on both ends. You know, other parts of like recently, I did an ash can for my newest campaign, and in that ash can, there's a letter that this murderer wrote, and that letter was a short story that I wrote for when I was in college, and it was like basically like a murderer's note, you know. So it's like stuff like that, you know, you just experiment with and turn that into comic material.
That's fascinating. Yeah, that's awesome. And I don't know if anybody wanted to add to that. I did have a follow-up question to that. So
I'll just throw
go
my
ahead.
2 cents real quick on it.
Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
I think for me personally, I probably had a different set of circumstances than most people going into this because comic books was basically like my only job option I would allow myself growing up. And so I'd been doing submissions like, you know, since my teens all the way into like my mid-20s. And that was, you know, like right around my mid-20s was when it got common to just start emailing submissions. You didn't have to do paper stuff anymore. But every website for most publishers had like a sample script for, you know, just depending on what you were trying to apply for. So I read tons of sample scripts over those years, and they were all pretty much exactly the same, with like a slight variation on the setting or the characters, but it was like the same set of actions, like characters moving along in town, everything's fine, then some bad guys show up and they're about to face off, and then you cut off, and they would have you spread that out to about like 5 or 6 pages. So I got a little bit of an education early on just from going through so many of those and kind of realizing the similarities and the differences. But and after doing so many books for other people and reading so many scripts over the years, you start to realize like who kind of knows what they're doing and who doesn't. And it helped a lot leading up to me actually trying to write my own book, because I went into it way more critical of what I was doing, probably if I would have tried the same thing like in my mid-20s. So it's like anything else. It's experience and just learning from things that are already good and already successful, and trying to just be passionate about what you're working on. Like pick out ideas that you feel like you can thrive on or build from, because you're going to put more into them instantly if it's something you're already into. And just come up with a beginning, middle, and end, and then try to fill the gaps with things that are awesome and make sense.
Oh, we have a bit of an echo. I don't know who that.
So,
I guess that.
So,
yeah.
Hey, Lofty, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I unmuted myself so I could speak.
Oh, you're good.
I wanted to kind of refer back to your background and also kind of build on what both Phil and Joe said. So you have done a lot of work in like screenplay type stuff, and that is going to suit you very well, because the thing you have to learn with screenplays in order to be successful is that you have to focus on the story and completely delete any idea that it's literature, right? It doesn't have to be beautiful prose. It needs to be descriptive, to the point, so that whoever ends up interpreting what you write down the line can key in on the key details. And that's no different. And Joe will tell you, like as an artist reading a script, you're looking for key things. And if those key things aren't there, then the artist then sees that as white space, right? And so that's a tough balance. But ultimately, you as a writer have to figure out what is key, and everything can't be key, right? You have to be able to know, like, I've got in my head, I've got 25 things I want to happen on this page, but ultimately I know maybe only 3 things can happen. And so you've got to be really kind of ruthless and kind of narrowing down which of those 3 things can happen on this page, right? And so maybe if you don't want to do too many things on one page. Right. And then what Phil was talking about with pacing and page, so for instance, you may not want to put the kind of punchline to a bit in your story on the facing page. You might want to make them turn the page to see the kind of the explosion or to see the effect, right? And so there's just little things like that experience is really the only way to do to really learn that stuff. And I think also once you start working with an artist, you'll learn what parts of storytelling you need to put in the script, and then what parts of storytelling the artist is going to bring. And each artist, and once again, I defer to Joe's experience on this because I'm no artist, but every artist is different. Some will want a lot of description. But others want a lot of white space, because they are, and if you recognize the fact that your artist is a talented storyteller, then you'd be stupid not to play to that.
Yeah, it just depends on who you're working with, and you feel people out over time.
Yeah.
So if I can just give an example from Door Kickers, right? So Door Kickers being a military thing that I hate to say it, but I know a lot about the military, right? And in some cases, I probably have forgotten more about the military than any of my artists will ever know, right? So I have to understand what is important, because I'm writing this type of a book from the standpoint of, hey, if other guys with my experience read this book, they have to be able to see that, yeah, this guy knows what he's talking about. But at the same time, like, Lofty, you don't know shit about the military, and you don't know anything about conflict, and you've probably never even been punched in the face before.
Yes, I have. Yes, I have.
Well, you were never even in a fight in 3rd grade. So anyway, no, but my point is a guy like you needs to be able to pick my book up too, and be able to be like, oh, I like military stuff, and then read it and enjoy it, and not have. And so that's less about the art and more about, you as a storyteller being able to, like I said, ruthlessly take away detail that is just not important. And that was a really tough lesson for me to learn.
So, yeah, that's it's a good segue into like my follow-up question, which is basically when you're writing a comic book, you're telling a story that, unless you're writing a one-off comic, right, that's going to continue. This is how I'm looking at it. So that's the way I'm asking the question is probably going to be like from my perspective, but I have an idea for a comic. It has the potential to be a very long and expansive story. Just the genre and the world that I've kind of chosen, and the opportunities that like presented itself. So when you're writing a book one, what do you try to tell? What do you, as a storyteller, what beats do you hit in terms of your story? Do you have a beginning, middle, and end that is more of an introductory kind of phase, or like in your experience, you can talk about your own comics, but for example, like what I have in mind is an origin story for a character. It's, you could say it's similar to, if you've ever read it's not a superhero story. It's actually I guess I'll talk about it a little bit. It's a cyberpunk horror. That would be the genre, I guess. I have I'm leaning towards the direction of like a manga art style, which I think is interesting. So I'm been doing a lot of reading lately. I've been reading Battle Angel Alita. I've been reading Ghost in the Shell.
Great books.
Yeah. Hellsing. So I'm kind of like, I'm doing this interesting combination of cyberpunk and horror, which I'm doing it because it's kind of the story is like interesting to me and like personal, but also the genre is kind of like, I don't see that too often. But aside from that, I have an origin story idea, and I think, do you guys have an issue with let's say writing a 30-page comic, or whatever you would like recommend for a character, origin story, background, establishing the character as like an interesting, relatable hero in a sense, or anti-hero, and then ending the book on whatever kind of wrapping up of that origin that I have a specific kind of way to end it in mind. But do you see that a lot in like with new comic writers, or just comics in general, as like a viable way to start a comic book?
Well, you get like new writers that want, to establish, say, like a superhero, and they want to really focus on the origin story.
Yeah.
I was literally just talking to my brother about this today, and he brought up, take two movies, for example. The Vin Diesel movie Bloodshot that came out right before the pandemic. That was an origin story.
Right.
It's a decent movie, but it ended because it was an origin story. It laid the foundation for more movies. But
right.
They're not going to make more movies because
right.
Vin Diesel's fat, or they're just not going to make more. But because they're not going to make more, that movie is now not at its full potential of how good it could be.
That's a good point. Yeah, for sure.
Same thing with any stories or comics. So if your first comic is an origin story, especially in the climate that we're making comic books in. You're going to have to keep in mind that, all right, it takes, maybe 6 months to produce a comic if you're good at it, right? And it takes 2 months to crowdfund the comic, and then a production time, and then shipping time. The fastest a newcomer at doing this stuff is going to get two full books out, say they're 48 pages. That's probably like a 2.5 or 3 year span of time. So if you have this origin story here, now you don't have your character at its full potential in, say, a sequel. And what if you get another idea and you're like, oh, I want to do this idea now, and I don't want to go back to that idea. So you look at a movie. What's up?
Oh, well, you mentioned like a kind of like a time frame for like maybe being an obstacle. Is that now? I already have another idea that I like want to do, but I'm not doing it because it's insane. Like it would take me probably 5 years to like write it. It's kind of like a fantasy epic. Like it's too much for me to wrap my head around. And I went to this genre of cyberpunk or horror or whatever I kind of want to call it, and then I think it's more grounded for me, and I think I could do a story. Now, could you like talk about that again, like in terms of like your time frame for like writing a solid story? I guess, are you talking about the whole breadth of like writing a story, finding an artist, doing the artwork, doing the campaign? Is that kind of what you were referencing?
Yeah, for sure. Well, specifically of like the time that your audience finds out about your story, and then when it's in their hands, because that's an important time frame, because they're going to get excited about it, they're going to want it, they're going to pay you for it, they're going to get it in their hands, and then there's another period of when they've read it, and then when is the next book coming out.
Okay.
So
what it boils down to is don't make your origin story boring, because it may be the only shot you get on a particular thing. So if you're going to do an origin story, make sure you're doing a really fucking good story, and then people will come back for more. But if you waste that opportunity, it can be detrimental.
And I think people put weight on the origin story, where if you look at a movie like Dredd, the new Judge Dredd film, there's no origin story at all. You don't even really need to know who Judge Dredd is.
Right.
The world defines who he is.
World. Right.
Yes.
The world tells you who he is, and it's the way that I like to do comics, where it's self-contained, and there's a little part where it's like, okay, there's a little opening for a sequel, but all in all, it's self-contained. If that person reads that one time, then they're satisfied. And later years down the line, you could flesh out the origin if you want to, or you can do it in little bits throughout each book.
So let me just kind of weigh in here a little bit.
Scott, you're gonna weigh in. I'm gonna be right back. Give me like 2 minutes, Scott. You can take the floor. I'm gonna refill my drink. I'm just gonna refill my drink. I'll be right back. Thank you.
Well, I feel bad. I'm going to give this wisdom, and Lofty's never going to hear it because he's too lazy to go back and listen to his own stream.
No, I have my phone with me. I'm going to hear
it. I'm just kidding. Anyway, so the key to origin or not to origin, right? And Phil really kind of hit some of the key points on this. Does your world define your character, or is it a character that defines the story that and I'll go the other way. So Phil made a good example of Judge Dredd. Through the story, you learn who he is. You don't need to know what his background is. You just need to know what he is and what he means to the world around him, and how he affects, i.e., the story. Whereas a guy like Peter Parker, Spider-Man, it's a transformative event that is key to his narrative, i.e., his motivations, his key motivations, right? Because Peter Parker, the day before he was bit by a spider, was a different person. Then he was bit by a spider. Then he was another different person. And then when Ben died, he became another person. And ultimately, that transformative process is important to that character. And that's the reason why I think, not necessarily the most wise decision, but that's the reason why I think they keep going back and telling Peter Parker origin stories. I mean, we've seen 3 of them. So if your character is like that, and how he becomes who he is critical to who he is, then yeah, I think an origin story is in the works. And then it just goes to, okay, so once you make that decision, then you go to Joe's advice. Don't make it suck. It's got to be a good story. But here's the thing: you can do an origin story, and then you can kind of build it into your business model for how you crowdfund. And one of the things, I mean, I appreciate the ability to just kind of talk purely from the standpoint of a creative, but if you're doing this to create a comic that you're going to crowdfund and then sell to you've got to think of it as a business too, right? So if you could do a 20-page origin story and you've got the money to pay for it up front, then you could use that 20-page origin story as a freebie to get people to then buy the 46-page, or 48-page crowdfund comic and then, and if you get to a certain level, you may even put that origin story as a backup story in the crowdfund book. And so if it does better, you can add features to it. And so that would be one way to kind of look at it. I know that I know that it's kind of distasteful from some time to sully the creative spirit of what you're doing with business decisions. But ultimately, when you wear both the hat of the producer and a creative, then you literally can't, you shouldn't be thinking about one thing without thinking about the other. That's 2 minutes of waxing poetically. I guess.
Well, yeah, if your objective is to be making money as quickly as possible, you have to take that into account. If your objective is, I don't care if I lose some money, I'm gonna be artsy fartsy and do what I want, and we'll see
then
how
you can
it goes.
throw all that out.
If you can afford to do things, do things. If you really can't, and it's a terrible idea to do so, then yeah, try to be as business savvy as possible. I always say to people, if I wasn't so invested in death, and I wanted to just lean right into making money, like I would probably do something like, I don't know, just a big titty book, just some cool action book with a chick.
Well, that's the reason why my second book after Door Kickers was Peregrine.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that because people like it, and it's as long as you're doing good work, still people are going to come back for it.
Well,
nobody disrespects Witchblade. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's a respected character. So even though it's a lot of
she was like one of the original Bad Girl comics from the 90s, and there's still a huge appetite for that. Billy is an amazing guy and all this kind of stuff, but ultimately it's the books that bring people back. And so I think that there is something to be said for being pure in how you put your energy into the creative process. But at the same time, I think if there is ever going to be any kind of a business venture tied to whatever project you're doing, you have to think like an entrepreneur and be as efficient as possible.
I'm back, by the way. Yeah, I appreciate that because that's definitely part of this whole conversation because I am going to be trying to first and foremost, I want to write a good story. And I'm super obsessive compulsive about I've written a ton of short stories in the past and screenplays, and I'm I've never done anything with them because most of them are don't meet my expectations. So it's that's just how that's how I am as a creative person, I guess. But that's kind of the number one thing in my mind. But at the same time, I actually think the viability of like the commercial side of this is definitely appealing. And especially if you're like in certain circles and you can like network with people and go on streams and do promotions and stuff, it's almost like kind of like have to think about that a little bit. And I as far as like my comic idea goes, like I actually have some marketing, promotional purpose to what I'm doing. I can't really say too much like what that is, but I think it's
You're
like
gonna
going to
make
be
a video
really
game, aren't you?
no. Yeah, I'm gonna make a porno video game that is called Subversive. That's the title of my game. You guys ever played that Subverse game?
Yeah, Subverse. I've never played it, but I know I became aware of it through the Ted Pool controversy.
Yeah, there was like weird controversy over that, but no, no, I have like an interesting idea as far as like marketing. I think it's like I'm not gonna say it hasn't been done before, but I think it's gonna be like really interesting. But so
Is
it's I can't really say because I don't want to like.
it a billboard? Are you gonna buy a billboard?
No, it has to do with just like kind of streaming and things like that. But I don't. Another thing is like I don't want to. I've had so many hobbies. I have a 3D printing business that like I'd never really got off the ground. I have a reptile breeding business that I'm kind of trying to do, and like I'm also streaming and I'm doing YouTube video editing, and I'm trying to play games and read comics and watch movies and anime, and like you know what I mean? Like life kind of just there's not enough time in the day. So
well, let me tell you, I'm just kind of putting my entrepreneur hat on, just listening to what you just said.
Yeah.
I mean, so the best way to do this is to compare you to anybody else in the chat who let's say he they're a writer, they write in college or whatever, but that's it. That's all the experience they have. They also read comics and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you have that's advantages you over other people and why you will be able to be successful? Okay, so for instance, forget about your connections, first of all, because you clearly have connections and those would be very important. But you're doing the cyberpunk thing, right? That's
sure.
I think that is a huge market for that, especially if you put it with a horror element, right? And then you've got this 3D printing thing that you were doing in the background. Yes. I mean, Phil, if you had a 3D printer and you knew how to do that shit? How fast would there be 3D printed stuff on your next campaign?
Oh, I do, and there is, brother.
Well, I know. I think I've seen some of your stuff recently, and that's what kind of
made me ask you that. And that's also, we're seeing that everywhere now on like a bunch of different, like there's a lot of awesome.
So that's actually something I was going to ask you about because I've printed before. The problem is I was like not doing live streams, and I was like just working for the Quartering, and it was just a full-time job. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this 3D printing project on the side. And as soon as I started getting that like up and running and the logistics of like shipping and like marketing these like little things that I was working with a 3D modeler, and it was a really cool idea. And then I started doing streaming, and then I started doing freelance jobs for other people. And it just like, I didn't have time for the 3D print. I had to prioritize, you know what I mean?
Well, that's the thing, Lofties, especially when you're getting into doing your own book, that you're going to be running a campaign and casting artists and colorists and being because as a writer, I'm a like almost full-time project manager. I mean, not full-time, but I have a day job, but every day I'm thinking about this project or the next project and getting messages from colorists and artists and approving stuff and making edits. And I haven't played a video game in like actually played a video game in like 3 years, because so
it takes a toll, and like you have to prioritize your passions over your sometimes you have to prioritize like some passions over other passions, and I guess financial incentives would be like one important.
Well, that stuff will just start to not seem that interesting or worthwhile. You'll be so consumed with things that matter that you'll go, you know what? I just don't give a shit anymore about this. I don't know why I did it in the first place. You know, I don't know any video games that aren't 8-bit. I'll put it like that. I quit giving a shit after Super Nintendo.
So here's the so here's an interesting segue into, well, I want to wrap up. I'm just going to write this down quick because there's an interesting video game segue that I have into my comic. But I do want to say that as far as 3D printing goes, I actually had my second idea that I'm not going to do, but I might at some point. I had a really cool idea, which would be like printing miniature models that are of the characters of my comic, and including it into like a campaign tier or something like that, right? Yeah. Is that a thing? Do people do that?
Yeah, they do it all the time.
Okay, I didn't know. I wasn't sure.
It's even more so now. Like this year, it's actually taken off pretty big. Like I could tell you like 3 campaigns that have miniatures like that right now.
Wow.
Yeah. I think the miniatures is a good area for growth, especially, you know. And Phil, I'm curious what you think about this. It'd be great if there was almost like a CG miniature standard size, so that when you put them all together, they're not like, and theoretically you can all make them all part of it, like a tabletop board game down the line.
Yeah, well, that's the great thing about STL files, 3D printing files. You could scale them up and down. So
easy, very easy.
Like
you don't even like. Honestly, I have a software. It's called, starts with an F. It's been like 3 months since I've printed anything, but I spent like an hour learning, and then I started printing, and then I did like maybe I did like 5 corrections on the plastic and all these different things, and then I started printing these models, and it was just like super easy. It was so easy. Like I have these really cool. Basically, I have reptile hides that I'm making. I have like 15 different lizards that I breed and just have for fun. But I'm printing these reptile hides that are based off of video game architecture and like pop culture references. So like the Tatooine, like Luke's home in Tatooine. I have the Jurassic Park Velociraptor pen, the Pokemon Center. So it's where like a lizard will go climb inside and sleep at night, or like get away from.
I thought you meant like a cow hide, like a...
No, it's called like a hide. Like they go hide.
Right, place they go.
And the reptile market where I'm from is like massive, like absolutely huge. So
you're talking about something you actually put in the little reptile cage and lets them hide it.
So I also build out of styrofoam. I build like really elaborate reptile enclosures. Like I have a Monster Hunter 4 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot replica of one of the levels in Monster Hunter that I spent like 3 months on. And it's just like, it's really cool. And like, I was trying to start this trend that I don't think I've seen before, which is like video game replica content in reptile tanks and like terrariums and things like that. Like you would see your lizard hiding inside of a Pokemon Center or something.
Talk about a niche market, man.
It's niche, but I sold immediately all of my product in like a week, and then I was like panicking. It's niche, but you realize how many people have reptiles that are named after Pokemon. Like it's actually crazy. Like people like really ate that stuff up, but it's very weird. But anyway, my point is the STL file thing. Like, that just seems like a fascinating way of incorporating into your comic book. Like,
another thing they're doing now, Lofty, is they have the STL file, and they'll sell the model, the print, but some people are just giving away the STL file for free if you get like the print too. So now you could have that and scale it whatever if you have a printer. I'm really into statues. I'd love to do a statue, and then with the same thing, you could scale it down to a mini. That's for sure.
Mhm.
But,
Awesome. Now I wanted to like go into this video game question because video games and movies and music and things like that are like a hyper passion of mine, especially film. I went to film school, which a slight tangent. Don't study film at university. Just join like a film forum on some website or like Discord community or something, and just do that because you'll learn way more about like whatever you're interested in. But I've been like obsessed with classic 50s noir films, like 50s horror films, 80s horror films, like different genre, like Alien, The Thing, The Fly, all these different like old school genre stuff. And I kind of want to incorporate some pop culture into my comic. It's a with the idea that I have, without like taking 10 minutes to like go through all of it, but have you ever read Ready Player One, the book?
sure.
Any chance? Okay,
That's exactly what I was going to reference.
yeah. So I wouldn't say that I'm like going for the vibe of Ready Player One, but I have like the cyberpunk genre itself lends itself to kind of 80s pop culture. I'm sure you've Blade Runner, Michael Jackson, a lot of like these like cyberpunk like music tracks kind of like replicate a lot of his early beats and stuff. But that's kind of the vibe I'm going for. And my question to you, John Carpenter, John Carpenter has incredible soundtracks. I actually have something that he has too. Yeah, anyway, I would say one of the things I wanted to hit on in this stream is copyright infringement. So as far as like referencing pop culture, have you guys ever done anything like that? And have you ever run into any issues?
So the answer is no, but I can't imagine if you reference it in an organic way in your story. Like, for instance, you're talking about the fact that your character loves Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
You're not talking.
So,
he's got a Star Wars t-shirt on, so it's in the panel, and he's talking about Star Wars in the dialogue. He's referencing like, like, whoa, I guess that guy didn't shoot, he didn't shoot first or whatever, things like that. You're never going to have a problem with that. That's all super fair use. I mean, it's okay. Only when you start stealing things kind of outright. But even then, like, let's say you stole the plot to Star Wars and then did an entire comic that was essentially a retelling of Star Wars, but with different characters and different stuff and different settings and all that kind of stuff. They wouldn't have a leg to stand on, because that's exactly what George Lucas did in order to create Star Wars in the first place. That being said, as a creator, you always want to kind of do the hat tips to your, to your references and all that kind of stuff. And you need to be honest with your audience, but it sounds like you're not trying to do anything like that.
No, kind of what you said as like, you just gave an example of like a character like Star Wars.
Right.
I have a main character. So what I focused on initially when I was like developing this idea was a setting and a character. I just think like those are I guess, I don't know, from what I was like pondering, like the most important aspects of the story, which would be what is the character's background, what is the character's perspective on life or whatever, and then what setting is he like, does he exist in? And then I found this like really cool combination of a character and a setting, and then I was like, well, my character really likes now keep in mind this is a cyberpunk story. So this is like a kind of like a futuristic world, and there's different variations. There's like dystopian future, like usually when you think of cyberpunk, it's like corporate overlords, and then like slums and like things like that,
low life, high tech.
Exactly. So there's a character in my story that is really interested in, or his passion is like throwback, nostalgic, 80s, 90s pop culture. There's this one, for example, there's this one arcade that actually is like, like it's kind of like a retro arcade that exists in this world of like high tech, futuristic, hologram shit. And instead of like joining all the other kids that are obsessed with running around with their hologram machines, like this kid spends a lot of time in like a classic like retro arcade. And like, I was gonna like think about potentially referencing things like Street Fighter or like old school comic or old school video game stuff. But that was my question. Like, as long as yeah, go ahead.
No, well, what I was gonna say, as long as it makes sense for your world, right?
Yeah.
You had said that character and world are kind of like the first two things you're thinking about. I would say character, plot, world would be the way I would think about it. But ultimately, as long as the mechanics of your world make sense, you can do whatever the hell you want. And so what does that mean? Well, okay, so go back to character, right? Because character is important. Well, your character likes playing old school video games because it's something he can touch. He's sick of wearing some sort of immersive, he wants to, view the world through his own eyes. So maybe he has a parent or somebody like his mother was addicted to, VR games or something like that. And so he has a real big distaste for that.
I can describe it quick, I guess, because I've got to the point where I'm not going to backtrack on this character at this point. Now, I don't. The reason why I don't like talking about what I'm going to do necessarily is because A, I might change my mind. B, it might never pan out because I'm paranoid about finding an artist and all this stuff. But this character is like kind of really important. So basically, both of his parents were very like old school kind of nostalgic people. Like they had different passions. His father was like into like old school video games. His mother was into old school like films and music and things like that. And my character is actually an orphan. So there's this dynamic where he has like a longing for, his he's kind of like, he has this, he misses his parents and he's kind of like absorbing their identities as like a youth. And like, he's going through these like, this interesting transition, but he has like he has these passions that he's basically learned and like acquired from his like parents. So that is like, it's not that he's like sick of like the nostalgia or the high tech stuff. It's more of like a connection to like, it's like an emotional connection kind of thing.
Yeah, it's the way that he remembers them.
Yeah. So that's exactly what I was talking about. It makes sense for your world. It makes sense for your character. There are other people in the world who value the things that he likes, for various reasons, right? Right. So that's where the nostalgia stuff comes from.
The main thing though is, can you get away with putting iconography from pop culture that megala corporations own? That's the stuff you have to worry about. With Ready Player One, it's just written, right? There's just words that they're referencing these things, but putting iconography that another company owns into the comic, probably not the best thing to do. People get away with it with like.
I honestly wouldn't worry. I wouldn't worry about it, but I mean, Phil's got a point. I mean, it's a concern, but it's a concern that I wouldn't care about.
Can I break that down to like different versions? Okay, so the obvious thing that I would want to do if I had freedom would be like, a panel in my comic has one of my characters playing like Street Fighter 2 or Marvel vs. Capcom or like something, and doing like now that is mainly because that's what I'm interested in, as like I relate to my character and like that's kind of what I'm writing. But also, I think readers will be like, oh my god, look, this character's playing Marvel vs. Capcom. So
I
are
mean,
you saying
Image
are you
did it.
saying that I would need to maybe like slightly alter the title, like Street Brawler or something? Like,
So
would that be like fair and safe?
so here's it depends, right? The answer is it depends. I think if you just wanted to drop the reference either through a visual nod or through character dialogue, I don't think there'd be a problem with that. Because you're not
Right.
stealing the property, you're just referring to it. Now, here's the thing. If you instead of having him play Street Fighter, you have him play Alley Fighter, which is basically a ripoff of Street Fighter to the point where everybody will know what you're talking about.
Right.
And then you decide as part of your campaign that you're also going to make an 8-bit, indie video game called Street Fighter, or it's called Alley Fighter as part of your campaign, and then that becomes an opportunity. If you own the referential name, even if it's just slightly different, then there's things that you can do with it outside of the comic that you never would be able to do. I mean, you could make a video, for instance, promoting your comic,
Right.
with that 8-bit game in it or whatever.
Right.
You can capitalize on the obvious nod as long as it's just different enough. That's
Okay.
I do that all the time too.
So here's an
Yeah,
example.
Joe, Phil, what do you think? Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I know a perfect example here. In 1993 or 94, Image Comics, Dan Fraga comes out with a book called Black Flag. There's an issue of the book where this kid's playing. There's these two kind of like Dragon Ball Z characters fighting, and then you zoom out and you realize the whole first 5 pages of the book were inside of a video game that this kid is playing. And then you look at the kid's room. There's a shot of the kid in his room, and in the background there's a Mortal Kombat 2 cartridge. And I was talking to Dan once. I'm like, hey, how did you get the okay to put that MK2 thing in there? It's like, oh, we didn't ask. It's like, but it was ripped from the Mortal Kombat 2 Sega Genesis cartridge, which is like a scan or an image they had,
Oh, so it wasn't even an artist rendering. It was like a scan.
Yeah, it was just like from the magazine or whatever. It was like the direct art from it.
With comic books, a lot of stuff flies under the
kind of thing
radar.
is risky.
Yeah, right, sure, but I mean, I'm sure that issue probably sold, 9,000 copies. It was the 90s back then. But like Joe says, comics, a lot of stuff flies under the radar. But also, or do you want to chance that? I mean,
yeah.
So it's just kind of like that kind of thing.
Interesting. Okay.
Just remember, Lefty. Fortune favors the bold.
Yeah, just remember to send the bill to Scott when you get sued by Capcom.
Oh my god, that's terrifying.
Hey, my advice is free, Phil.
Well, I'm not super obsessed about have to have the exact character model of Ryu and Ken or whatever, but it's almost like I feel like I could get away with doing a nod of, you know what I mean? I might even end up setting this in a different universe. So I could just do alternate. It would just be very easy to do alternate.
Yeah, of course.
Art and titles and things like that. But
so
another, go ahead.
No, I was going to say is, this is where you have to then put your writer's creative hat on and decide, well, what are my options here? Is this an alternate version of our world, just 20, 30 years in the future? Or is this on a planet settled by humanity 10,000 years ago, in the future, that is at a late 21st century tech level that has its entire own cultural tableau for you to then create as you tell your story?
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? So you can do a whole lot of different stuff and still replicate the same effect. So
actually, that's interesting. I actually do think this would be an Earth, either an Earth or an Earth 6 or an Earth 616 or something that's very similar to Earth. where that's kind of what I'm aiming at for a specific reason. My character, or my an important part of the story, I think, is I have like I'm working with an artist, and I sent them a bunch of reference art. And do you guys know have you ever seen Michael Jackson's Beat It music video?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
Or the Thriller?
Like a million times.
Yeah.
Yeah, they tie their hands together with knives and they're dancing in a circle trying to stab each other.
Well, I remember as a kid, I was like, I'm pretty positive. I could be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure I got the Ninja Turtles, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles VHS from like Blockbuster or something, and like they used to play like commercials, I think, at the beginning of VHS tapes.
Yeah, like
previews or whatever. I'm pretty sure that there was a Beat It music video that played at like in the Ninja Turtles like video VHS tape that I had or something. I could be mixing it up with something, but anyway, it's kind of like a nostalgic thing for me. Like it's my favorite, like probably my favorite song of all time. And like anyway, I have my character design. I sent like reference sheets to an artist. I have Michael Jackson's red leather jacket as like a part of my character. And it's not like an identical. I told them to like kind of slightly alter it a little bit and like just kind of maybe homage it.
Yeah.
But you know how kind of like the movie Drive with Ryan Gosling, he has that scorpion jacket.
Right.
So like I'm kind of trying to like do something similar to that, where like my character has like an iconic jacket that like that's just it's almost like his superhero costume.
So let me get this straight. You're doing a cyberpunk futuristic with a character with a red leather jacket that's his kind of signature. That sounds like you're remaking Akira.
No, I'm not. Well, okay. I
was thinking about Akira too. I'm not gonna lie.
Now, I never once thought about that when I was like thinking about all this shit. But when I was thinking about doing like deep dive research into like the whole genre that I'm doing,
Lofty, this is because you were raised on the wrong manga and anime. You were raised on the wrong stuff.
No,
don't feel bad either, because the Japanese did that because of Michael Jackson. Like a lot of people
Michael
did that
Jackson.
Yeah, I know.
To this day, the wrestlers dress like him. They love him. Like he's still a mega star, even in death over there. So.
Instead of a pill on the back of the jacket, you should put a Tic Tac.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to like give too much away, but that's kind of like the vibe I'm going for a little bit, and partially because my character's father was like a big Michael Jackson fan, and he's like he has like so I just want to like know that, I guess, wrapping up this copyright thing, and then we can move on to like the next topic. As long as you're kind of like just doing slight homages and things like that, like I shouldn't am I okay to like dive into my story and like kind of do some of that stuff, or am I?
Yeah, no one has the copyright of Michael Jackson's jacket.
Yeah.
So here's the way you should approach it, right? You should write everything in there to include referential names and everything. I mean, like literally, don't even think about that stuff. Like when you write your script, you just put it all in there. And then you read, and then so once you're done, then you go back as part of your revision process, and you say, okay, I shouldn't call him Michael Jackson. That's too much that's too on the nose. It's just not good writing. So search and replace. Michael Jackson turns into, Jamie or whatever, right? So that's how I would handle that. You get it all out of your head and get it onto the paper first.
Tito.
Another problem I had was I thought of I honestly thought about this, but it might be too on the nose. I thought about naming. So I have a story beat, and then I have multiple potential like sequel storylines that if I would like continue the story, That
you
I would
cannot name your character Han Solo. We're just
no.
Case right now.
But am I allowed?
San Holo?
Yeah.
Am I allowed to subtitle? Okay, let's say my comic. Let's just say it's called like Cyberpunk 2020 or whatever. I don't know. Am I? You know how like sometimes you have that's not what it's called, but you know how you have like a title and then like a subtitle.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mean like Peregrine Wings of the Falcon?
Yeah. So would I be allowed to say Cyberpunk something, and then the subtitle would be like Smooth Criminal, like referencing like a Michael Jackson song?
Well,
Is
so it's
you know
always
what I mean?
that is a little too on the nose. It's also a common phrase, so it's not like anybody would ever be able to strike you for it. The problem is that do people just kind of think, well, is that a little too on the nose? And that may be the case. For instance, let me give you an example, right? I was thinking of subtitles for my 20K page ashcan for my current campaign, and what I came up with is a reference to a 20-year-old Japanese J-pop song. The song is called "Walk in the Park," and I called my thing "Walk in the Dark." Now, there's zero connection between that song and my book, but that's how I got to that title.
Wait, since it's Japanese, is walk spelled W-O-K?
Walk
in the park.
Yeah. You guys really love the Japanese, huh?
I do.
Anyway, so Brian Kriskow, he's a comic sheet writer. He been writing a book called Six Gun Gorilla for the last, 6 years or whatever. And all of his subtitles, it's about this big ass gorilla with 2 revolvers in the Wild West. All of his subtitles he took from old spaghetti westerns that are pretty obscure. And even though they were already used for film, he's repurposed them and used them as subtitles for his issues.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing that probably makes that work is the fact that they're so obscure that the number of people that would get it. Smooth Criminal, on the other hand, is a international best-selling.
Yeah,
that's true.
Not exactly obscure.
Well, the reason why I actually initially thought of this is because I'm writing a cyberpunk horror story. So the song Thriller was just like, okay, why don't I incorporate this somehow into my story?
Well, you get creative and you just call it Slick Insurance Fraudster.
Yeah.
Problem solved.
Anyway, it doesn't have to none of that shit actually has to happen. I'm just kind of feeling out because I don't know anything about marketing or because I'm assuming if I'm going to be fundraising, I'm going to be getting money and all this shit. So it's not just I'm writing a story that I'm going to give to my friends, but.
Right.
So, if I could just divert off of the writing topic for just a second and more on the crowdfunding aspect, I think the kind of gold standard for how to do this kind of stuff was set down by John Malin a long time ago. You need a platform, right? You need a good idea, right? But once you have a platform and a good idea, then it's not about will you be successful or not. It's how successful will you be. If you've got a YouTube channel with 3.43 thousand subscribers, like you do, Lofty, you're going to sell some books no matter what, because of that 3,000 people that sub to you, some of them want to buy what you have to sell. Right. And so as long as it's not hot garbage, you could come up with some really off the wall shit and people would buy it. That being said, then you have to decide, well, is that good enough, right? Do I just want to sell to people who would just want to buy the thing that the only reason I'm doing this is so I have a copy of my own book, right? If that's the case, then
no. It's not, that is not what I want to do.
Okay,
I want to write a good story.
That's not my impression. I'm being hyperbolic. Yeah. I think you are like the rest of us. You have a good idea, you think, and you want to get it out there, and you want to hopefully make something more of it. You know, maybe there's a video, maybe you've thought about how this would work as a video game down the line. And maybe, you know, you have dreams of someday singing it as a, you know, like a TV series or a movie or something like that. I mean, because you know, anybody in CG that has said that they wouldn't love to see a movie of their idea made someday is lying.
Sure, yeah.
We all want that kind of thing, and we also want to tell, you know, Disney and places like that to go fuck themselves.
I know.
In order to make those types.
Yeah.
Now, if you're able to keep your bad takes on Flashcast and out of your book, I'm here to tell you, man, you're already set up for success. It's just a matter of how successful will you be.
So, yeah, I think now another half of this conversation. I don't know. Wait, can I ask? While we're in this kind of transition, how late are you guys free to kind of continue the chat? I think I'm free till like midnight at least, but it's 10:58 where I'm at the moment. But what are you guys doing?
I can go for maybe like 10 more minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, I might have to cut out in a little bit.
Gotcha. Okay. So let me just at least skip to this this important question that I think is a very important question. When you're working with an artist, how the hell do you go about finding an artist is my first question. And then how do you so maybe you could start with that, and then I'll at some point ask how you can relay your concepts and ideas to like the artist to like to kind of do this duo, like you know, team up.
I've got my ideas on this, but Joe, I want you to kick this off. I want the artist to kind of lay it out.
Yeah, Joe's an artist.
It's kind of stuff you've already mentioned to some degree. I mean, you try to get photo references that best represent at least aspects of what you like, even if it's not perfect. You know, you may say like, I want my military guy to have this cantina from Warhammer, but I want him to have this, you know, outfit from Call of Duty. You just find the closest things you can to help relay your mental images, and then you do your best to look at their artwork and get to know them just a little bit enough to where you can dictate how much information you need to give them. So like they said, it's different for everyone you deal with. So those are kind of like your steps that'll help you define like how much description you need to give an artist or how little, or what they're capable of on their own. And because I've worked with people in every degree of that, like from micromanaging all the way to like someone being like, here's some bullet points, make this into 8 pages. So, and some guys, there's some writers where they're not clear enough with me, and it causes the problem of them wanting too many changes or something like that. So when you start to get to know people, that's when you know, like, okay, to avoid future problems, because I don't dislike this person, I'll be very specific with what I ask them, and if I ever question something, I'm just going to ask them before I get carried away with it. And then there's other guys where, you know, you're just going to draw what you draw, and you're going to hand it to them, and they're going to be like, all right, looks good. It's just it all depends on who you're working with, and you'll kind of figure that out as you're working with them once you've made some decisions.
Okay.
The way kind of like finding an artist before I got into CG was super difficult. Just because when you don't have a grounded network to hold on to, you're just free floating and with no idea in your head of like, where the hell do I find someone that would be proficient at drawing sequential art and wants to do it. You know, the motivation is really big when you're working with collaborator with anything that you're kind of teaming up to do something. You want them to be as motivated as you are. Mm-hmm. So before CG, you know, I had read books on, you know, creating comics and stuff, and they had referenced digital webbing, this sites where all these comic artists and creators come to, that wanted to make comics. I don't even know if that's still a thing, but
Interesting.
I tried there, and then it's just this really shitty forum at this point. And I tried friends who were concept designers and just that low motivation.
Well, can I make a specific, like a little bit more of a specification? So, I'm kind of like, I know I shouldn't be like picky because I haven't done this before.
No, you should be picky.
You should be picky.
You should be picky.
100% be picky.
Well, that's my point. Like, if I'm going to get, like, this is my mindset. Like, if I'm going to do everything I can to like promote this and make like people want to buy it and like make it good and like readable and like I want to have exactly like I want to have exactly what I think is appropriate for the story. So I'm thinking more in terms of just from a couple different things. My characters that I have in mind, and also the I would say the tropes, the different tropes that I have in mind, because you kind of just have to, deal with tropes. It's just a thing. I think I'm looking more towards like a manga artist.
Yeah.
Is that like a totally different, like, how would you network with a manga artist? And would I have to like network with a Japanese or a Korean artist, or like would that be something that's
there's literally 10 million zillion Western manga artists that are all fully capable of doing the job. It's literally the entire world is filled with a million manga artists. Yeah.
It's the same. You just have to find them. I mean, and I was getting at is Comicsgate is amazing now. Fertile place for artists that want to make comics. Wow. Like I wouldn't have met Joe and we wouldn't have collabed on that story together if I wasn't part of that. And literally that Lost Pages book has, just in the first book, I think it has 4 different line artists in it. For that campaign, we did a supplemental book that has 9 extra stories, and that has 7 more different artists in it. We did trading cards that, like throughout the whole campaign. Just because I did my first book, Magicon, I met all of these artists, and we employed about 24 different artists on the Lost Pages one. Wow. And that goes to show how fertile of an area that CG is. And you could meet and see just about every different type of artist there, and including manga artists. I actually wrote a short story for a manga style character that's in that universe with Kyung Lee, who's an amazing manga artist.
So my take on this is that there's the rule of threes with any kind of product that you make, Lofty. Yeah. It's that it can be good, it can be cheap, or it can be done fast. It can be any of those two, but not all three.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to artists, right? If you're willing, if you don't, so just real quick, you have a budget already, like some money you've set aside that you're willing to kind of dump into this to kind of get it started.
Yes.
Before.
I should say now, if anyone's listening and they don't have a budget, maybe we could touch on like just a general scope kind of thing. But personally, I'm treating this as like I would an investment. So
right,
I pulled all my funds from whatever the fuck I was invested in at the moment.
Wall Street. We know you were doing.
It was crypto. No, I was doing crypto, and I literally had NFTs. I'm not gonna lie. I was trying to just experiment and see what's going on. That market's a fucking disaster. But so I have funds. I have definitely have funds. Go ahead.
So here's how you get an artist. You basically say, you have to decide what your budget is, right?
Yeah.
If your budget is $200 a page, then you will have no trouble finding artists. Just let me repeat that again.
Yeah.
You'll have no trouble finding artists from anywhere, right? And like Joe said, that a lot of Americans, are capable of doing that manga stuff, but unfortunately, it's expensive to live in America, so they need to be paid more. Unless they're just doing it from the standpoint of like they're an 18-year-old living with their parents, and they have no expenses and they're willing to do it for $100 a page, right? Now, that being said, it's not to say you can't get art done for $100 a page. You can. You just have to look outside of America, and there are a lot of talented artists outside of America who are willing to work for less. But if you can afford an American CG person, that's actually good for you. And here's the reason why. Every member of your book that is a part of CG is another person who can spread the word and who is a stakeholder in your project, and has a benefit to see it succeed. So, I mean, I that's why I either use people that I personally know and I've known them for a long time, or I use CG people. I try to do that almost exclusively. The only example of a person that I found, not through CG, but since I started doing door kickers, was my colorist, because colorists are really hard. There just weren't a lot of colorists out there at the time. Now there are more, but that's
you're gonna have to go overseas for colors at this point. Like if you want to get them done in any reasonable amount of time.
Yeah. Now that's another thing is like I'm kind of. I definitely want a colorist, because just the genre, like the cyberpunk genre, is kind of like, you need pinks and blues and all this shit.
Color is a big part of the world. Yeah.
And especially with horror, like my story in particular has a lot of blood, like a significant amount of blood. So
I mean, so that's another thing. I mean, you need to be probably looking at if you're going to go overseas, you can get colors for $40 to $50 a page, no problem. I mean, in the States, you're looking at what, Joe, about $80 for a good colorist to actually produce on time.
65 to 100, depending on experience level.
Can you clarify what do you mean by that? Like 65 to 100 what?
Dollars per page.
Per page? Okay.
Page rates are the bulk of how you're going to pay people, and if you want to do other incentives after that, that's between you and them. But you basically start at page rate.
Can I also ask you guys what like an ideal comic page range would be in terms of like something that would be like a volume 1 of like, I don't know, like a 10-ish. Yeah.
First of all, I want to know what your frame of reference is. Do you have any crowdfunded books that you've received?
Oh, I have one right behind me. I haven't read it yet. I have RGE's comics on the way. I think he's sending them. I think I just kind of got into this, like literally as soon as it started streaming, I was like, oh my God, Umbrella Guy, RGE, you guys making money on your comics? So like I just started, you know what I mean? I have industry comics. I have a lot of Image comics. I have a lot of Marvel comics.
Forget that trash. So if you look at what the readers expect out of a CG book, they're looking for thick paper, heavy cardstock. They're looking for glossy or specifically matte colors on the outside and things like this. They're looking for full color. They're looking for probably no less than 48 pages of story, but that's negotiable. A good story, but you're looking at if you're looking at a price point of between $20 and $25 a book, that's what they would expect, right? And then on top of that, then you have to look at what is shipping cost, right? So this is how you have to put that business hat back on and start thinking about, kind of back of the napkin, your budget. So like, how much would I need to make on the crowdfunder? How much of my own money am I willing to put in? That type of thing. And where's my break even point? And then it goes even further. Like if you're going to do a trailer and you need to have that done, how much art do you pay for up front versus do once the crowdfunder is successful? These are all the kind of little nitnoid business factors that you have to kind of figure it all out. And most of the time, the first time guy just doesn't understand all the steps in the process. So I think that's one of the cool things about this show is that there was no show. Clint's show kind of talked about this kind of stuff, the Sweetcast, back in the day, but really there was no other show that talked about like, John Malin's was more on pitching book ideas and things like that, but he did talk about things like, hey, make sure you have a platform, make sure that you're helping out other people, because if you help other people, then people will then help you, right? That's part of that whole network. That's the whole, get an oar type thing.
Yeah, for sure. Phil, if you have anything to add quick, I was just going to wrap up because I think Joe had to leave. I'm gonna pull up some of your guys' stuff, and I guess we could wrap up the stream.
Yeah. For like a page count, you were asking page count.
Yeah,
I think I really think no less than 48, because if you think about it, 48 pages is just 2 issues of a floppy comic.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
But for I like to tell my stories in, I'd say, as storytelling, you've been doing this for now 4 projects. Say a good minimum is around 76 pages. Like you're going to get a good story where your reader is going to feel satisfied, and you could point your reader in a new direction. Do a sequel to that.
I think he's right. I think the old school, like 4 issues for a floppy, was a perfect kind of mini series story, right? You could really do you could take a 90-minute screenplay type, story and put it into 4 issues. And then, so what Phil's saying here is that essentially you're looking at 2 kind of comic books, right? Now, the one thing I would caution you is to write a story where book 1 is on a cliffhanger, because it's going to take, your backers are not going to get that book any quicker than about 6 months, and that's if you do everything up front before you do the campaign. But if you have to do all the art, most of the artwork and stuff like that after, you're looking at 9 months or so, if everything goes correctly for you, and you know how life happens sometimes. So I would try to make that first book self-contained, that gives the people a good idea who's in your book, what your world's all about, everything, and then have that bigger story kind of keep set up for like book 2, book 3.
Interesting. That's actually what I've already been thinking about. So that's very similar to, what were you gonna say? I'm actually sharing at the moment this is Joe Ball's comic.
That's right.
Death.
And this guy's fascinating. I'm a big Berserk fan, and I Kentaro Miura fan, and I just I appreciate detail, and I like looking at panels for 2 minutes. You know what I mean? And just kind of absorbing the artwork. So I feel like that's what Joe does really well.
Yeah, you're gonna love this then. Yeah, as long as I've known Joe, he's been talking about this, and finally seeing him to be able to get it out and work on it and show pages, and it's awesome. If you guys love sci-fi and Berserk and Transformers, you're gonna love this. 3 different styles of books. Like, you could either get it black and white.
Yeah, look at this. This is completely different.
Color, manga style, with the gray tones. Yeah, check it out. This is amazing. And it's a huge book. It's a tome. It's like 300 pages.
I mean, 300 pages is tough, because that's going to be expensive as shit to ship.
Oh, he's getting it out there.
I just can't believe it. Like, he's doing this as a 100% a passion project, because there is just, this is not normal from what I've seen in terms of people making comics in this industry and fundraising and stuff.
Yeah, well, he's got a story to tell, and he's telling it. Back it. It's awesome.
Trying to find the poster. Oh, here it is. This poster I like a lot. Or this must be a cover art.
Yeah, that's like his more manga style art.
Yeah, I like it.
Really cool.
So, yeah, it's awesome. I think let's see here. How do I pull up? I just don't want to remove too many people. Oh, that's my. I think I can remove this without killing the stream. I'm gonna pull up Joe's comic. Sorry, who should I pull up next? I just did Joe. We have
Phil. Talk about your big news.
Big news.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let's do Phil. Do you have news?
I guess so. That a drunk Dale Keown announced that I'm going to be writing Pit for him, which is going to be awesome.
Wait,
that's huge, brother! Congratulations.
Dale Keown, the artist, the legendary Hulk artist and Pit creator from the '90s. So, yeah, I've been working with him, and I'm going to be doing some.
Wow.
Be writing that. Come the big comeback of Pit. It's going to be awesome.
That's crazy.
Dude, that's going to be awesome, man. That's huge.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's gonna be crazy. Yeah, I was just talking about it. But yeah, so if you guys are excited about that, then definitely check out the Lost Pages, which is characters my brother and I created years ago, just for fun and actually putting in the work and making them into some comic book characters. So this is kind of our universe of heroes. And if you're any type of comic book fan, you're going to find something in here that you dig because it crosses many different genres. There's the heroes that all live in one universe that will eventually come together. But these are kind of the first looks at them. They have the first book is on this campaign too. So if you guys haven't read the first one yet, and that kind of sets up all of the characters. And then this one specifically focuses on the Silhouette, who's our ghostly vigilante, set in kind of like a black and white, almost Sin City-esque type setting, like you're seeing the world.
Sin City.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and yeah, it's shipping out now. We're gonna ship out another big batch tomorrow. Been packing a lot and getting some awesome reviews. So check it out. This is definitely. I think this is the best thing we've put out so far. It's the biggest campaign we've run so far as well.
Wow, this is amazing. I love this. This is like my favorite.
Yeah,
I just like the composition.
Oh man, yeah, that's done by a good pal of mine, an artist named Dan Dahl, and that's the reprint of the first book. So I think that just encompasses everything about the world, because you have that character in the back. It's called the Hobo, and he has this magical book called the Book of Lost Pages, where it's basically a book that is being written in succession of time. So new pages are added as time passes, and so he kind of kind of like a book of knowledge. So he's telling these stories about the heroes.
And it looks like you have so many quirky characters. Like that's was that something you wanted to do? Like appeal to a reader's like imagination, like kind of like over the top character stuff?
Yeah, I think they really stick out, and hearing feedback from the readers, there are a lot of people's favorite characters are around. I think they're very proud of how kind of iconic they are, and you could just look at them.
Yeah,
we try to make their silhouettes very unique and very memorable.
I was telling you in DMs, I think, or somebody, I don't know, but this reminds me of like a fighting game roster.
Yeah,
like Soul Calibur, or like some kind of like just you would have all these characters.
My background.
Oh, okay.
One of the first communities I was ever part of was the fighting game community. I used to tour around and go to tournaments for Mortal Kombat and
nice.
Justice. I was actually on a team.
Wow.
So I mean, I'm really familiar with that stuff.
Yeah, I don't have a hyper focus on it. I played a lot of Marvel vs. Capcom and Street Fighter and Smash Brothers, and yeah. This is really cool, man. So go, guys, go back some of these books here. These are now, this is ongoing, right? Like this is still going.
Yeah, this is in demand, so that means that it'll just stay up as basically a store, and it's shipping out now, so you won't have to wait a long time to get the book. We have all of them printed already.
Wow, so that's amazing. I'm going to do one more quick, and this is. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you want me to do what is CG Vacation? Is that another link you sent?
Yeah, that's actually
that looks fun.
Thanks, man. Yeah, that's kind of a big project. We're kind of doing like with as many people as we can in the community, kind of getting their like their hot female characters and putting them in kind of like a swimsuit edition book for everybody. So
oh wow,
kind of all the big names and small names too. So check that out. That's just a sign up, totally free to sign up, and it'll just let you know when we're launching that, which is at the end of the month. Kind of working on the cover right now.
And sign up here, guys.
Yeah, so if you're a fan of CG, if you're a fan of comics, then we're doing a huge collab over here. It's gonna be fun.
Wow, that's kind of crazy. So it's like a massive collaboration, basically.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome.
You know, this is like a la the old school Wildstorm and Image, like swimsuit comics that they used to do back in the Spring Break comics or whatever. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring up this. Dude, this StreamYard is annoying. It's so okay. I got it. So Door Kickers.
Yeah.
I really like the art here. This oopsies, let me go back to the what am I doing?
It's striking. It's awesome.
Yeah, we got a little bit of Resident Evil vibes here. I don't know if it was intentional or not.
Sure. Yeah, so Door Kickers is it's special mission force that is tasked to kind of take down supernatural threats and terrorists who use supernatural weapons. And so the they're a kind of a black operation, that the government doesn't tell anybody about because they want to keep this stuff secret. It's the world of the supernatural in Door Kickers is very much kind of based on cosmic horror. I hate saying Lovecraftian because it's the most overused descriptor, but that's the stuff that I was reading.
So accurate. He influenced a billion trillion different things, so it's just, don't feel bad using that word.
I know. I mean, but at the time that I first came up with I was in Afghanistan and I was reading free Lovecraft stuff off the internet, and there, outside of a couple of stories, I had never read a lot of Lovecraft, so it just started giving me the idea of like I'm seeing real special operations, real CIA, real things like that happening in Afghanistan. I was like, how would these people, if you put them in a situation where they had to fight these types of supernatural threats, how would they do that? And so that's how I kind of kept it grim and grounded in reality. But I'm also a big fan of Warhammer 40K. And I'm a big fan of like Dungeons and Dragons from when I was a kid and all that kind of stuff. So there's very much a kind of a Dungeons and Dragons vibe on how like it's like you got a fighter, but he needs a weapon to fight a certain type of threat. So he has to, so maybe the bullets in his gun have a special, magical property. And so we kind of talk about that a little bit. And it's just a real fun, this is definitely, I mean, you can tell this would work really well on the big screen. It's just, sure. I have a lot of fun. It would be an awesome video game. That's, could you imagine like a Call of Duty meets oh shit, what would be a good House on Haunted? Dark Souls. That's exactly right. Call of Duty meets Dark Souls. And very lethal world, where the things that kill you don't even care about you. Anyway,
Wow.
that's Door Kickers. We just hit 20,000, so I want to say thanks to all my backers. And then the thing, and so just real quick to kind of go through, I've got 2 different covers, and then I've got a book that's a 20-page ash can, and so so essentially there's 54 pages in the main book and an additional 20, so a total of 74 pages of story in this. And you can also get the first book that's available in this campaign as well. So it's a fun campaign. The arts move along. Actually, if you go up to the to the top, and you can see the updates, and I've got new art in the updates.
Wait, where? Go up to the top.
So go up to the top. Yeah, right there in the center underneath the main image. Underneath.
Say updates.
Yeah, updates. And so the most recent update here, we've got new artwork. And it's just some of this is completed color wise, and some of it is kind of temps, the flats, just so people can get an idea of, because I want to, a lot of people are very secretive about their books. They want to give them like a couple pages in the beginning and then that's it. Right. I'm like, people have given me $20,000 of their dollars to make this book. I need to, outside of maybe 5 or 6 critical story points, I'm going to show them everything. And so as soon as I get the first 24 pages, as I get the first 24 pages done, I'm going to put letters on it and I'm going to release it as a digital preview to all the backers. So if you're a backer, you'll get an email when that's done. So you'll get the first 24 pages.
Yo, look at this panel right here. I mean, this page. So how the fuck do you tell an artist to do exactly what this happens in this panel?
So there's 2 parts of that, right? I mean, so I had an idea, but I knew that it's one of those kind of things. There's a lot of things going on. So what I did was I just described in one giant paragraph everything that's going on over like a 15 second period, right? And this is one of those pages where I realized that, it's like action is where you really get your money when it comes to these splash panels and things like that. And so originally this was this was one page, and these were all panels on it. And then I realized, what's funny is I made a change later in the 20s, I think, somewhere at age 20, and I added a page, and I realized I had an opportunity to add an additional page. And that would give me a 2-page, kind of splash. So that's how this worked out. And you just have to look for, as a writer, you have to look for those opportunities to not be so married to your work that you can't look for cool, happy accidents, right?
Oh, of course, of course. We have Chris Gore in the chat. Hey, Chris Gore, what's going on?
What's up?
Awesome. He's like Lofty does live streams. I don't normally do live streams, but I'm actually starting. I'm starting to do live streams, Chris. You should tune in every week.
I remember back in the 90s reading his magazine in college. That was the weirdest thing when I saw Chris Gore show up in the culture war space on YouTube. So that's probably one of the deepest callbacks.
Yeah, I got G4 flashbacks, but.
I never watched much G4 because I was an adult.
Every day. Oh, so you must be.
I'm in my late 40s.
Okay.
Old. And so I was I was in the army all during the 2000s, and so I went to Iraq and Afghanistan and places like that while you guys were watching G4.
Nice.
Yeah, I was doing research for Door Kickers.
Did you watch Cheap Pringles Gamer's Guide, Mafia?
No, I don't know what that is. Wait, is that a G4 thing?
Yeah.
Oh, Cheats. Sorry. Yeah, you're a little quiet, but yeah, I definitely watched Cheats. Did you ever watch Icons?
No.
Do you remember that show? Oh, that was my favorite show. It was it was kind of I guess a documentary style episode of G4 or whatever, where they would go into these different iconic, studios or like people or whatever. And they would just do like a deep dive kind of thing. Attack of the Show was like my main thing. Yeah, it was fun times back in the day.
So anyway, this is my my claim to fame within CG is Door Kickers. So it's definitely a unique kind of thing.
Go back it. This looks really cool. What's that, Scott? Or Phil?
No, I just said back it.
Yeah, guys. I appreciate. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say the only other thing I want to plug real quick is my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
It's a left field from it's related to Door Kickers, but not related to comics. So it's the Future Conflict channel on YouTube, and it's if you hear about all these rumors, the wars and rumors of war that are going on out in the world, you can guarantee that we'll be there talking about it and kind of trying to figure out if it's something you need to really worry about or if it's something that you can just kind of roll your eyes at. The current thing has definitely been Ukraine, but now it's switching to domestic kind of conflict. So I'm curious to see how fast Ukraine goes down the memory hole. Unfortunately, our administration seems like they want to get us into a war with Russia based on all the things that they're doing. So it can be dire content, but we have a lot of fun with it. We've got a lot of like real deal professionals from the both the world of military special operations and the CIA.
Wow.
So we've tapped into something really cool. We do live streams every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings, and then we do a live stream typically every Saturday. So yeah, check it out. Give us a sub. We're almost at 17K. I mean, not 17K, 1,700K. So
wait, why am I not subscribed? I've watched your videos before.
I know.
I don't know why I'm not subscribed.
I don't know why. I'm just saying, Lofty. I'm subscribed to your channel, so I mean, I subscribed to Phil's channel.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, I got caught in 4K, guys. What's Phil? What's your channel?
Zaid Comics, ZAID Comics. Yeah, it's me and my brother's channel. We're gonna be streaming tomorrow night. We do a Diaz Brothers show where we actually have a live studio set. That's a new thing since we got monetized. It's pretty fun.
By the way, you definitely have the best intro on Ethan's stream.
Oh yeah, yeah. If you ever watch Ethan's stream, I got a pretty good intro there. But yeah, there's the channel. We actually, speaking of video games, I work for a big arcade, so I do some arcade videos sometimes. I've been putting those up, but yeah, we stream every Monday and Friday, and then I also will bring other creators on during the week to talk about their project. Next week, we're going to have Billy Tucci on talking about his new She campaign for She, which is an amazing book. So, yeah, head on over there, give it a little sub, and watch some of the videos. Pretty fun. Pretty fun stuff. And thanks for having me on, Lofty. It was a pretty fun time.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been a good time.
Thank you for coming on. And it was really good to meet you guys and network with you. I know I've talked to Scott before, and Joe's in my, he streams in Flashcast. Phil, is really, really good to meet you. Now, this is kind of like, I was expecting this to happen, but I had a bunch of other questions, especially about like campaigning, and also stuff like character, like diving into build, you know what I mean? Like building character relationships, like romance, like how to not do like a cliched relationship between like, a main character and like a rivalry or whatever. And
we should do other shows.
I would love to do a follow-up stream. And I would like to have more people on. Maybe this could be like a thing, like a monthly thing or something. I'll try to set something up.
Like
a writers group. That would be sick.
Yeah, writers focused. Yeah. I'm down with that.
And
damn artists get too much playtime.
Exactly.
Yeah, just let me know.
That sounds good. Hey, also chat, thank you guys for staying for so long. I think we hit like 50 viewers at one point. I had like 12 last time I was streaming. So
no, we were at like 51 or something.
that's crazy. And
yeah, that's
we
awesome.
already have 94 likes. We almost have 100 likes. So let's see. I'm trying to get. I am so confused with. I'm a little bit drunk and I'm trying to cancel my windows. All right. Oops.
Well,
So
what's really Lofty, what's really important is the Jack Show is going on right now. So everybody needs to jump off of here, hit the like button, and subscribe to Lofty's channel before you do. Make sure you hit that bell for notification. And Lofty, why don't you sign us out?
All right. So thank you guys for joining. We are going to move to the Jack Show, apparently. I was not invited, but I'm going to try to force my way in.
Yeah, definitely.
And thanks again for watching. We'll probably have more of these. Keep in mind, I'm going to try to be doing weekly streams. So if you guys want to subscribe, hit the notification bell. That way you'll get like stream updates. Because if you don't follow me on Twitter, like you just won't know that I'm streaming. But as long as you follow me on YouTube, that should be cool.
Cool.
And yeah, thank you guys for joining. I will.
See you guys.
We'll see you next time. Peace out.